The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Things are continuing to get not better, and I would argue significantly worse for Congressman Duncan Hunter, who we now know used campaign funds to pay for extramarital affairs with lobbyists and congressional staffers, according to California prosecutors, based on a court filing at the beginning of this week. And this guy, who happens to be a Republican, and honestly, I don't really care about this guy's party. I mean, I've said before, Pat, when it comes to the sexual assault allegations, you don't see Democrats standing behind the people accused of sexual assault in any serious way. And for me, it's like, okay, yeah, he's a Republican and there is a cult of corruption in the Republican Party. There's also a cult of corruption and cronyism in politics in general. For me, his party membership is relatively secondary here.
Well, I get that, but I think there's another layer of hypocrisy when Republicans do it, because they talk about being the party of family values. They talk about being the party of personal responsibility. And what happens in a case like this, Duncan Hunter looks like he's getting caught with all these affairs, and he's not taking personal responsibility. He's calling the whole thing a witch hunt. And certainly, I don't know the dynamics of his relationship with his wife, but certainly if they're not in an open relationship, you'd think that cheating would go against the family values thing that Republicans always claim to be in support of.
No question. There's a number of double standards. There's the double standard of claiming it's all about personal responsibility and not taking it, claiming to be the party of family values and not living by that, et cetera, et cetera. That's absolutely true. And in fact, it's a family issue that is going on because Margaret Hunter, Duncan Hunter's wife, is also facing federal charges, pleaded guilty earlier this month, has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. And it seems like there is sort of a family affair that is going on here. And the details are extremely salacious. And to some degree, I understand people are interested in them. You know, Hunter and an unnamed staffer spending nights together at his office, going on dates funded by campaign donations, which of course is very serious. I mean, using money donated by constituents meant to get you reelected and then using that to go out to dinner and playing mini golf and drinks and snacks, as the filings say, that is actually serious and that needs to be dealt with. But I always, it's sort of this kind of disaster porn type of stuff, Pat, including, stories of ski resorts and affairs with lobbyists in addition to staffers. I get the interest of it, but we just need to root this stuff out. And I don't know how much talking about the details helps do that. What needs to happen is this needs to be taken just as seriously as if it were a random person committing these types of financial crimes, even though random people don't have financial donation, campaign donations to do anything with. The punishment is what needs to be used to deter this.
And if he was just having affairs, I would be one to say, leave him alone. That's his personal business. He can deal with that stuff with his wife. He doesn't have to be stripped of his committee assignments. He doesn't have to be kicked out of Congress. But when you talk about campaign finance violations, that is a serious thing. If people are contributing to his campaign because they want to send him to Congress and do great things for his constituency, and it turns out that he's spending money on these lavish dates, they're not going to be too happy with that. I'd like to see him, maybe resign or at least get defeated in 2020. That would be great. This is the same guy, too, who admitted to taking pictures with deceased people in combat. Like, I think he was a Iraq war veteran, and he admitted to accidentally, supposedly killing dozens and dozens of civilians. So not a great guy, especially if he's taking pictures with the corpses.
Yeah, I want to see this guy go. He needs to go. I want to see whatever the most serious election finance fraud charges or whatever. We have to see exactly how it all ends up being delineated by the legal system. The book should be thrown at him, and obviously he should go. And of course, because, as I said before, the modern Republican Party sees everything as sport and wins and losses, it's not clear to me that Republicans would actually vote the guy out.
Yeah, well, Steve King, he was stripped of his committee assignments. He made that latest gaffe where he said that, white supremacist shouldn't be a dirty word anymore.
Yeah.
I wonder if he had made those comments before the most recent election, if he would have been defeated by J.D. Schulten, who you interviewed. And I don't know. Maybe it would have been a 50-50 chance.
Maybe
we see
so.
Roy Moore running again, so anything's possible.
And as I said on the regular show, why wouldn't he? He got 48.3% of the vote. It's not like he was obviously not going to win. The guy almost won, and if it were even for just a slight turnout difference, Roy Moore would have won, so I totally understand why he's running again. We'll see what ultimately happens with Duncan Hunter. San Francisco is banning sales of e-cigarettes. The Board of Supervisors voted unanimously yesterday to ban the sale and distribution within city limits of e-cigarettes. The biggest producer of e-cigarettes in the U.S. is a company called Juul Labs. That's Juul. They are based in San Francisco, interestingly enough. And the idea here is prevent people, particularly children, from becoming addicted to nicotine. And the argument is an interesting one, which is even if now we all realize the health risks of smoking cigarettes, a lot of the people that are now addicted became addicted when they were much younger, more impressionable, and before we knew as much as we know now about the risks of smoking cigarettes, they were addicted. So the idea here is, okay, e-cigarettes may be less damaging to your health than regular cigarettes or not, depends on which study you look at. It's sort of an open question right now. But these Juul products are significantly used by young people, and we don't want to do the exact same thing again, which is to get a new generation completely addicted as smoking rates have actually been declining in the United States, and then find out in 5, 10, or 15 years that this stuff is just as bad or even worse for you as regular cigarettes. So I totally understand it. My only thing with all of these decisions, Pat, is to what degree are they effective? They are effective to some degree, but of course, you can leave San Francisco and get this stuff. And this comes up when we talk about raising the smoking age from 18 to 21 or changing the drinking age. I want to reduce to zero the number of people that are using these products. I am not against this type of legislation. I just think it doesn't really go far enough in terms of being all-encompassing in terms of preventing people from getting access.
Yeah, it sounds like a health versus freedom discussion.
Yes.
But the problem is we're not even clear as to what the most healthy course of action is for a society, because on the one hand, it could be helping people get off of cigarettes if they go to vaping, and maybe that is safer. Maybe they'll be doing it less. And the other possibility would be if kids get hooked on Juuls and vaping, and then maybe they get confiscated from them because they're underage and they can't go out and buy it themselves. Then maybe they'll turn to cigarettes because they're still looking for that nicotine rush. So I think both scenarios could happen, and it's kind of done on a case by case basis. But yeah, I mean, like this is a big move by San Francisco, especially when you talk about like convenience store owners who make up a good portion of their sales from not only e-cigarettes, but also people who go in to buy an e-cigarette and then they get a sandwich and like a soda on top of it.
Yes.
So if you no longer can get the e-cigarette at that convenience store, you lose all of that revenue.
I get it. I get it.
That is a big hit.
That's often, when we talked about the soda ban, remember there was also this argument, listen, you're going to disproportionately hurt these small bodega owners and owners of these convenience stores who are making some significant portion of their revenue from the sales of this stuff. I understand that. That's not, I'm sensitive to that. I don't want to appear not to care about that. But I don't know how we mix all of these priorities. I'm not for total deregulation and let everybody buy whatever they want, because we know that there is, just by a product being available, it lends credibility to the product must be somewhat safe. And I know that that's if you have a buyer beware sort of attitude, the fact that a product is available should not communicate to you that the product is safe. But that's the reality. In the same way that it lends credibility to a crazy right-wing guest to interview them unopposed, even though there's no rule that any guest on a show is a credible, good person, I feel like by virtue of just being legal, these products to some degree are considered to be okay, or at least not terrible for you. So I do think things need to be done. I just don't know where the line is, quite frankly, Pat.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about a product that has been legal for so long, it's tough to go back and later get rid of it. People are still going to crave it. People are still going to try to seek it out. And, there is also that black market argument that can be had, that if stores in San Francisco start banning Juuls, then maybe the underground market will start forming. Maybe it'll come in from outside of the city limits. And that certainly is possible, especially when you're talking about only one city banning it. No
question about it. And again, I am trying to, a lot of what we're saying does not fall totally cleanly along partisan lines, because I think that this, in general, vice taxes and vice bans go beyond just standard left-right partisan politics, and we've got to think a little bit more deeply about it. There's a group of billionaires who have a message for the 2020 presidential candidates, and that message is tax us, tax the wealthy. There's an open letter posted on Medium signed by 19 billionaires, including one anonymous person. And what they're doing is advocating for a wealth tax that would collect money not from the top 1%, not from the top 0.5%, but from the top 0.1% of Americans. The letter was signed by some pretty prominent names, including Abigail Disney, who is the heiress of Disney, as you might imagine, Facebook co-founder Chris Hughes, investor George Soros, Blue Haven Initiative co-founders Liesl Pritzker Simmons and Ian Simmons. They give 6 reasons why there should be a wealth tax. One of those is money to fight climate change could be raised, as well as boosting economic growth, supporting investments in public health, shrinking the wealth gap, strengthening democracy, and also just making billionaires fulfill their patriotic duty. They call it a moral, ethical, and economic responsibility to impose a wealth tax. So I think that this is fascinating, Pat. I think this is sort of like the patriotic millionaires movement, and I think that it's really interesting to hear it from folks who would end up with less money as a result of the policy that they're advocating. I still continue to have concerns about the legality of a wealth tax. That's a totally separate conversation from the morality of it. But I've read a couple more legal analyses that say, they argue, that a wealth tax would be difficult on a couple of different legal fronts, but still very interesting to see this group come together and put their names on this.
Yeah, and a wealth tax isn't really something that was even considered just a few months ago. Like when Elizabeth Warren released her plan of, I think, what is it, like a 2% tax on net worths above $1 billion or something like that. I may have the numbers a little bit fudged there. It was news to me that you could even do that you can come up with a policy proposal like that. And I think other progressive candidates will follow suit in supporting something like that because it's actually overwhelmingly popular. I didn't think it would be popular either because, it seems to go against our American sentiment here that, you make your money and then that's your money and you get to keep it all, or at least a good chunk of it, certainly after it's been taxed.
What I find interesting about it is that it can both be popular and incredibly unlikely to ever become a reality. And those are sometimes some of the best policies to advocate for as a candidate strategically. You come up with something that would be insane. I mean, listen, if you don't have a supermajority in the Senate, I don't know how you pass a wealth tax. I mean, truly, I just don't see a path if you don't have a supermajority. And even if you do, it's a question mark aside from the legality. So if it's popular, it's one of those great policies to talk about because people will love it. And it's extremely unlikely that you're ever going to actually be in a position to make it a reality.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen. Not anytime soon, that's for sure. And certainly I think we would be more likely to pass things like a 70% marginal top tax rate than we would be able to pass a wealth tax. But I don't know. I mean, the income inequality arguments that these billionaires are making, they're definitely good ones.
Absolutely.
Not only that you can use the money to fund social safety net programs to fight against climate change, but also just that reducing income inequality makes our country better. There's this old idea that countries with big income inequality become very unstable because it makes it so that the poor want to rebel against the rich. Unfortunately, I don't think that would happen in the United States, though, because I think of the Fox News right-wing propaganda networks have made it so that people who make average salaries are pointing the finger at one another, pointing the finger at immigrants who are taking their jobs and not pointing the finger up where it belongs, focusing on the rich folks. And that is unfortunate that they've been able to use the media to their advantage and really shape public opinion with that stuff.
100%. And also there's the question of the poor mostly work, and if they even miss a day, their financial stability is now in jeopardy. So their ability to even get together to protest and to demand that change is limited by the very thing that they are trying to protest and activate against. So this is all by design. I mean, these are considered features of the system we have, not bugs by the wealthy and corporations, et cetera. So very interesting. We'll see tonight, by the way, in the first part of debate one, whether wealth tax discussions come up since Elizabeth Warren is one of the participants in the first evening debate. I hope you will join me for a live stream on YouTube at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. YouTube.com/The David Pakman Show will be live streaming and analyzing tonight's debate.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.